Welcome to Financial Issues, where we join reality with truth, helping you make the most of your money by honoring God with your investments. Now listen in as we give you the practical tools and advice you need to become a biblically responsible investor.
Good Monday morning. Welcome to Financial Issues. And it's not just any Monday morning, it is Labor Day. So happy Labor Day to you. We hope that if you are taking a respite from your days of labor, that if you got the day off today, that you are enjoying your day. We're so glad that you tuned in to share it with us. So Financial Issues is a ministry that educates people about financial issues from a biblical worldview, teaching you how to be a good steward. So we focus on defunding darkness with our biblically responsible investment strategy and encourage you to be a good steward and fund the light, being a joyful and generous giver. Well, on today's show, a Labor Day edition, we are going to talk about why work is good. And then later in the show, Jason MacDowell, our friend Jason MacDowell, is going to join us to talk about the fruits of our labor later in life as we take a look at Social Security and more strategies on how to be a good steward and how we maximize those benefits and claim those benefits. Our stewardship verse today comes from Ephesians 4:28. Let the thief no longer steal, but rather let him labor, doing honest work with his own hands so that he may have something to share with everyone in need. Well, the part that really stands out to me there is that work provides not only enough for us and our families, but it provides an abundance for us to be able to share with those in need. Idle time is the devil's playground, as we often hear, and I guess that's why so many of us who are not busy working end up doing bad things like stealing.
Yeah. That's true, Shana. Yeah, the thought that comes to mind immediately from the scriptures is King David. You know, David, of course, was famous for his greatest sin, great in not a good way, but his worst sin of murder and adultery. But his first sin in that sequence was laziness. He was supposed to be going off to war. It was springtime when kings go off to war, and he was not. He was idling around the castle, and that's when Bathsheba caught his eye, and the rest is history. So yeah, work is a good thing. Work keeps men with a proclivity to sin. It keeps us busy, and that's a good thing. It's a very good thing. Yeah.
Well, speaking of work and Labor Day, I want you to see, and Seth, let's take a look at this moment in history about the working man.
You know, in order to get a complete picture of history, you have to be willing to sometimes step out of the box in your area of study. Usually, traditional history focuses exclusively on wars and the rise and fall of nation-states, prominent figures, but in this very special episode, I'd like to deviate a little bit away from our usual topics of study and dive into a rather unique lane of historical discovery. This idea is both cross-cultural and cross-temporal. It's vital to the survival of any civilized society, and for thousands of years, it's been part of virtually all nations and all places. Yet it did not really come to its full level of influence on society until the birth of our country, the United States of America. This unique topic of history is the workforce. You know, hard work is central to the human experience. In fact, as we'll see later in the program, work is actually a God-ordained phenomenon that predates the fall of man. Therefore, like all things God made, it is very good. So with that in mind, let's go back in history, specifically in the history of our nation, and discover the stories of determined workers who built this country into what it is today. So with that in mind, join me on our journey through history as we discover the topic of this special Moment in History episode, the working man. It's the second half of the 19th century, industries taking over the Western world in full force. And in this time period, we also see the beginning of a great wave of immigrants coming into the United States, especially so for refugees from Europe into East Coast cities such as New York, Boston, and Philadelphia. The American dream, the idea that anyone could make a life for themselves if they were simply willing to work hard enough for it, as we've already mentioned, came into fruition in this vital period in the life of America, a period known as the Gilded Age. Well, it was becoming clear the world would never be the same again. Titans of industry would come to dominate the workforce, where industrial production would win the day over apprenticeship and handmade craft. But it's important to mention that with the advent of mass production also came a newfound plight for the working man. You see, in America and elsewhere in the Western world, it became far too commonplace for major corporations to force their workers into hard working conditions with little pay and almost no benefits and almost no time off. Many workers would be on the job 12 to 16 hours, making little more than pennies, and a great many of them were children. So as a result, the U.S. government passed multiple laws to protect workers' rights, including minimum age and minimum wage requirements, as well as maximum daily working hours and the rise of labor unions. But in the 1930s, Americans faced a potentially catastrophic situation with the Great Depression. 25% of the American population, which came out to over 12 million citizens at the time, was out of work. But, as often happens in the course of history, terrible events bring out positive results, as the United States was dragged into World War II after an unprovoked Japanese attack on the Pearl Harbor military base in December of 1941. And though the war was catastrophic, and it absolutely was, it also jolted the U.S. economy out of the Depression with the creation of countless new jobs to help the American war effort. Now, alongside military positions, many jobs were created for civilians to contribute to the Allied cause. History tells us that these workers were instrumental in helping the U.S. citizens serving in the military to gain victory in the summer of 1945. Hard work is not only necessary for success, but is actually vital for godliness. You see, work is a pre-fall phenomenon, as we mentioned earlier, and it was instituted by God for human flourishing, and it was pronounced good, and it was only after the fall of man that work became toilsome and harsh, as Genesis 3:15 tells us. So as you go about the work that has been set before you, whatever it is, by the way, whether it's for making money or whether it's being a parent or being a student, follow the Colossians 3:23 model and do it to the best of your ability for the Lord and not for men, and that is going to be work well worth your time. As always, folks, I'm Seth Udinsky, and thanks so much for joining me once again for a moment in history.
So, Shana, as we know, today being Labor Day, we're celebrating the many men and women who make up America's workforce. And, these days kind of seems like there's a growing number of people who would be perfectly content to take government handouts and make income that way and not work. And so I'll just open by asking, why is work good and why should people want to work?
Well, work is good because God created it, and everything that God created is good.
Yeah.
One of the first things that God gave to Adam was a job. He gave him the job to tend and to take care of the garden, and it was a job that brought him a lot of joy and contentment. Also, most people like to eat.
Yeah.
And if the scripture says in one spot that if you don't work, you don't eat. So, and as it mentions in the scripture that we shared earlier, it really helps to keep us out of trouble, just like it probably would have helped King David stay out of trouble had he been doing it.
Absolutely. And how might one's work change in their lifetime depending on the life stage? It might look different.
Yeah, so work might look different. You might work with your hands, you might work with your mind, you might work with your mouth, you might be a communicator or a teacher. You might work in ministry, you might do a lot of different things to generate income. And where your pay comes from is maybe the thing that might change the most. So as you, for lots of people who work for a living, get up every day and go do a job and get an income that provides for them. Hopefully you're putting some of that away for some point in the future when your work might look different. I think we're called to work all the time. But, if you enter into retirement, maybe your income is going to come from some of the money that you have put away while you were working, but you can still continue to do some work. We should always be about our Father's business, our Father in heaven, no matter which mission field we find ourselves in, whether that's the workplace, the marketplace, ministry, our social circles, our communities, wherever we find ourselves, we should be about our Father's work.
Yeah, well said. And one of our founder, Dan Celia's favorite quotes was something like this: there's no greater skill than to have the ability to earn an income. Could you speak to that for just a moment?
Sure. God gives us this great privilege to participate in our provision. He gives us the ability to work, which generates income, which in turn meets our needs. But without the ability to work, we wouldn't have the income and we wouldn't be able to meet our needs. So none of us can really say that we're self-made, right? God could have just continued to rain down manna from heaven and give us shoes and clothes that didn't wear out, but he didn't. In all of his infinite wisdom, he gave us work to do, and there is just really something that is fulfilling in doing work.
Yeah, and kind of our final question here, Shana. Someone who's in a thankless job might not feel very dignified in that. How would you encourage someone to be able to find really this dignity in their work, knowing that they are working for the Lord?
Yeah, and that's it. That's the key,
Yeah.
is just to remember that we are working for God. We have an audience of one. We have one that we need to please, and that is God. And, take comfort in the fact that we'll never please man. Only that is God's role, and only he can please other men. So just remember that we are performing for an audience of one. Well, folks, we're going to take a break here on this Labor Day Monday, but then we'll be back with more financial issues. We hope that you'll stick with us.
I was sobbing, prayer for God. I'm so sorry, please. So I got on the internet and I just started seeing like abortion pill reversal, and I found a hotline number. We're gonna get this started, and it's gonna seem like a lot, but it's gonna be so fast, and it's because you only have a certain amount of time left. It's gonna be okay. We got this. We're gonna try to fix this for you and make sure you're good and the baby's good. Don't worry. And when I came here, my heart was so warm. Other than Planned Parenthood, where I was very cold and I was lost, and I just felt like I could have been, it was just terrible. And to know that Compass Care could tell me something different and get reverse a medication like that, that's amazing. That somebody would go as hard as if it was their children to make sure your child is gonna be alive and stay safe. So I want a lot of people to know it's possible. You can save your baby. You can reverse that abortion.
Navigating through investment options can be challenging, especially when you're determined to uphold your God-given values. Every dollar you invest is a vote for the world that you want to live in. Let your values guide your investment decisions and help to shape the culture in which we live. Become a beacon of light and pave the way with biblically responsible investing. Timothy Plan, where faith and finance collide. Before investing, carefully consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses of the investment company. This and other important information can be found in the fund's prospectus. To obtain a copy, visit timothyplan.com or call 800-846-7526. Read each prospectus carefully before investing. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
Welcome back to Financial Issues. Thanks for sticking with us today. Hey, if you are a partner of this ministry, we did have a partner conference call last Thursday, and the conference call is posted to the website. If you haven't had a chance to listen, make time sometime. Maybe if you're off today, you can do that. It is just a little bit longer than usual, just a little over an hour, but we had a lot of stuff to share, including a couple of pieces of information that will become public for the ministry, but we wanted to share with our partners first. So that's one of the things that if you are managing your own portfolio, if you're doing your own biblically responsible portfolio management, is make it a point to listen to the partner conference calls every month. It's just once a month and just for an hour, and it's most likely going to catch you up on everything that you need to know, maybe anything that you even possibly missed. All right, Seth, I know we got a backlog of questions.
Yeah,
let's get to.
We sure do, Shana. We got a good one here to start from Joshua. Joshua is a new partner. So Joshua, thanks for joining the family, man. Welcome.
Yeah.
He has a rather long question here, Shana, so we'll take it piece by piece. The first thing he says, been a partner, listen to your show since April this year. My wife and I have been focusing on our finances over the last 10 years to get rid of our debt and build our net worth. I had no clue about biblically responsible investing until I came across your show on CSN Radio, actually, learning that I was immediately convicted looking at my portfolio. That's awesome, Joshua.
That is. And you're in good company, Joshua. You know, the same thing happened to me. I was in the business for, about 14 years, in the financial services business for 14 years, and had never heard of biblically responsible investing until I came across our late show host, Dan Celia's program, and learned about biblically responsible investing. And my heart was pierced right away. So I'm glad that we were able to bring biblically responsible investing into your awareness.
Yeah. Amen. So he's given us just some information here, Shana, of kind of where he's at. He's basically saying where I'm at now is trying to build a portfolio using the portfolio tracker and the different asset allocation models is very intimidating and somewhat overwhelming. I'm not sure which model to pick since I'm 41 years old. Should I do the 25 to 45 or the 45 to 55?
Yeah. So I'll just say, you know, what rightly follows conviction is repentance. And we're so grateful that we get to help walk you through this stage in your life and help you to clean up your portfolio. So, you know, I will just tell you this too, that there's a lot of videos, you know, if we don't get everything answered in your question today, but there's a lot of videos that you can watch on the partner side of the website. But the way that you pick a model is it's based on sort of the transition from the accumulation phase in your life to the distribution phase. So what I mean by that is for, you know, as you begin, you know, you mentioned getting rid of debt, starting to build your net worth, investing in retirement accounts and things like that. And so right now you're in the accumulation stage. You're accumulating assets. You're adding to your portfolio. At some point in time, you're going to make that transition to where you're no longer adding money in, but then you're now using the portfolio to generate an income for you. So once you make that transition from accumulation to distribution, our models assume that age is 65. So it assumes retirement is at 65. So you can kind of work backward or forward from there. So if you plan on retiring it at 65, then you can really truly kind of follow, you know, the ages on each model. If you're going to plan on retiring later than that, or maybe you'll retire, but you won't need to draw on your portfolio until age 75, then maybe you can use an asset allocation model that's 10 years younger.
Yeah, good stuff, Shana. So then a couple more questions that he has is, how do I build my portfolio? What would go in mine and my wife's Roth IRA? And what would I fill my brokerage account with? And then my second question is, am I supposed to sell off all my holdings after I build my portfolio? Wouldn't that be a big taxable event? And then I'll end up paying capital gains tax. Okay.
So, you know, unless I'm missing something, in order to build your portfolio and put them into the places that they need to go, you probably are going to have to liquidate what you have. But the good news is this: whatever is in your Roth account, or maybe in a traditional account or a retirement account, that has special tax treatment. We call it qualified money because it qualifies for those either tax deferral or tax-free growth because the government said so. So whatever you sell inside a Roth, a retirement account, an IRA account isn't subject to capital gains tax. So the only account that might be in question is if you have a non-qualified account, an account that doesn't have special tax treatment, and then, you know, it could potentially cost you some capital gains. And, you know, you may want to be strategic about that. Like if you're in the 12% tax bracket right now, the capital gains rate is 0. So if you're under, you know, somewhere around the, I think he said he was married. If you're somewhere below the, you know, 400,000 plus range, forget exactly where it is, but, your capital gains rate is probably only about 15%. So it's probably not a huge penalty at this point, to do that. So you'll have to liquidate what you have to be able to transition it into other things. And then what was the other part? Oh, what to put. All right. So when trying to decide what to put in each account, I like to take the approach of managing all of the investable assets as one portfolio. Whether it's your Roth, your wife's Roth, an IRA, a non-qualified account, you look at all of your investable assets as one portfolio. So everything that you have in any of the accounts goes on the portfolio tracker as one strategy. Now, I like to take advantage of the different tax benefits that you may have in some accounts. So, for example, in your Roth account, as long as you meet all the qualifying criteria, which are pretty easy to meet, then you're going to get tax-free growth. So that means that you want to have the most aggressive or fastest growing pieces of your portfolio in your Roth account. Then on the opposite end of the spectrum, any pre-tax money or tax-deferred types of accounts that you have, you're going to have to put, you're not getting out of paying taxes on that. You're just kicking the can down the road. I think taxes are going to be higher in the future than what they are today. And so you want the slowest growing pieces of your portfolio. So that's going to be your fixed income allocation, maybe utility stocks, maybe some of your staples stocks that are just kind of good defensive plays that, don't really, aren't really expected to like shoot up in value, but expected to get you a good, steady, consistent rate of return over time. And then in your non-qualified account, the first things that you want to put in there are the ETFs because they tend to have a little bit more beneficial tax treatment than some of the mutual funds or, having to sell stocks at some point in the future. And then, really just kind of by default is where you'll end up with some of the other things. But if you start with those places, then the rest of it will just kind of fall into line.
Awesome. And yeah, Joshua, I'd encourage you to keep on asking questions, man. You're doing great.
Yeah, you are.
Yep. Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for that, Shana. Next question we have is Ruth, not a partner. Ruth is asking, my husband is the only one who earns a paycheck. Could he make contributions to a Roth in my name?
Yes. So as long as you're married, as long as one spouse has earned income, and you're under the income limitation. So if you're married, and again, I don't have it changes every year, and so I try not to waste brain space in memorizing all of that, but you can look it up. There's a certain upper limit of income, close to the $200,000 mark if you're married filing jointly. If you make over that, and you'll want to look at what the tax calculation is, then you can't contribute to a Roth at all. But assuming that you meet the income requirements, you could contribute up to 100% of his earned income. He could make a contribution to a Roth for himself, and he could make a spousal contribution in your name. So it doesn't say how old you are. If you're over 50, that amount is $8,000 a piece. If you're under, it's $7,000.
Awesome. Next one is Cecilia. Shana, this is more of a comment. She says, a couple weeks ago, I heard Shana say that they were discussing eliminating the titles to the asset allocation models. In my beginning as a new partner, those titles actually helped me learn the differences between the aggressive, moderate, and income or growth. And it started to make sense as to why there's a difference due to the ages of the partner. My vote would be to hold on to them. Thank you guys for all you do. Any comments for Cecilia there, Shana?
Yeah, that's good feedback, Cecilia. Thanks for sharing that. So, right now they are labeled with the style like aggressive or moderate or growth in income, and they have an age. But, just like we were answering Joshua's question earlier, he was having trouble deciding which one to start or which model to start in. And so, a lot of times I have to come back and explain, well, our age models assume that you're going to retire and start drawing off your portfolio at age 65. So you might have to make adjustments in there. So, it probably... what we'll end up doing is naming the model and then having a little description underneath to help people decide which one to choose.
Awesome, Shana. Next one is Adam. Adam says, good morning, FISM team. In the past, I have heard Shana mention that it's good to have a non-qualified account in addition to a Roth and traditional IRA. I have all three types and currently contribute to the non-qualified account and Roth. I don't plan to add to the traditional. Is there a percentage of my portfolio that you'd recommend for each account? Right now, I have 55% in traditional, 30% in the Roth, and 15% in the non-qualified, and I'm 56. What do you think?
Yeah, so, it really depends on a person's situation. I wouldn't say that there's really a cookie cutter model, but it looks like you're moving in the right direction. Most people, I will tell you from my experience, have the majority of their investable assets, liquid assets, in a traditional IRA. So for me in my practice, most of the time what we're trying to do is we're trying to reduce that. So, one thing that you can think of as a target for your pre-tax money is, later in life when you're 70 and a half, you can start to use that money to do your giving. And if you have kingdom beneficiaries, you can earmark that money to be given. That way you got a tax break when you put it in. You never pay taxes on it. And the portion that you pass on to kingdom is then not taxed either. So in your case, Adam, I would look at, getting the balance better in the Roth and the non-qualified, but it sounds like you're really on the right track.
Yeah, that's awesome. Boy, I wish we had time for more here, Shana, but I think that's all we have time for questions.
All right. Sounds good. Well, our show will continue, so we encourage you to stay tuned. If you listen on an outlet that only carries the short version of the show, you're going to have to go to like social media, Rumble or Facebook or YouTube to get the full show, or make sure that you have our phone app, because on the phone app, you get all the shows. You can stream it when it's convenient for you. For everybody else, stick around. We're going to be back with our friend Jason MacDowell to talk about Social Security and claiming strategies. Hi, this is Shana, Financial Issues. The Financial Issues family is so blessed to have saved tens of thousands of babies, all thanks to the generous support of you, our listeners and viewers. For $140, you can sponsor 5 ultrasounds. Please go to preborn.org, that's preborn.org, or financialissues.org and click on the Preborn logo. Save a baby, save a life.
Here at FISM News, our mission is to provide you with news from a source you can trust.
The news is a constant reminder that this world is not our home. It is marred by sin, resulting in wars, brokenness, and divisiveness.
Jesus promised that he will return soon to judge sin and make all things new.
Until then, we place our hope in him.
This is the good news, the most important truth we feel compelled to share.
Today, it's easy to get caught up in the rush and forget about what really matters. But when it comes to your money, are you making decisions that truly reflect your values? Too often, we invest in stocks without knowing what they stand for. What if your money could speak for what you believe in? Imagine following an investment strategy that recommends companies that don't support the things that break the heart of the Lord. A steadfast strategy, never wavering from biblical truth. When your investments align with your values, your money speaks for you. Let your money do the talking. Invest in what matters to you. Because biblical values matter, even when investing. Visit financialissues.org to learn more. That's financialissues.org.
Initially, when we became members, I thought, what if this doesn't work? I mean, we're going to give up this whole concept of insurance, and we're going to trust God and his people. And it was like, yeah, well, of course. I'm going to trust an insurance company to come through for me, or I'm going to trust the church to come through for me. And that's a no-brainer. I love getting the monthly share that I give to each month that has the name of a real person and their real medical concerns and a prayer request, for them. If I have a need, I know I can go get care. I can see the providers I want to see. I don't have to worry if they're in my network. And if we need medical care, the Samaritan is there.
A community of Christians paying one another's medical bills. For more information, go to financialissues.org and click the Samaritan Ministries banner.
Securities offered through G.A. Reppel & Company, a registered broker-dealer and investment advisor, member FINRA and SIPC. Opinions expressed by Shana are hers alone and are for informational purposes only, and do not necessarily represent those of G.A. Reppel or the outlet on which you are listening. You should consider how the information applies to your situation prior to personally implementing it, and consult any financial professional you work with to make sure it's applicable to your financial plan.
Welcome back to this Labor Day episode of Financial Issues. We hope that if you do have the day off today, that you are enjoying your day off. Well, speaking of labor and the fruits of our labor, Social Security is a big topic that we talk about quite a bit here on the show, and we want to kind of continue that conversation today. If you have worked your whole life, you have paid into the Social Security system, your employer has also paid into that system. So, a lot of people get offended that Social Security is called an entitlement, but it is an entitlement. We are entitled to the benefits that we have paid in to the system for, and those who have not paid into the system, who have come here illegally and probably will never pay into the system, are not entitled to that benefit, I would say, with the exception of, maybe a stay-at-home spouse whose spouse paid into the system and or, a minor whose parents died early and did pay into the system. So, lots of people hear us say kind of general information, general recommendation that you should really consider waiting until you're 70 to claim your Social Security benefits so that you can maximize your monthly payment. But there's always this temptation to say, well, I want to claim as soon as I can so that I can get back everything that I've paid into the system, because that's going to take a long time because we've paid in a lot. So especially when fear enters the picture, fear that you won't live long enough to get back all that you've paid in. I can say this, that even if you don't live long enough to get back everything that you've paid in, where you find yourself, if you're a believer, that is going to be the last thing that you're concerned about. You probably won't even think about it. So the bottom line is that most people tend to end up with a 30% higher monthly Social Security benefit if they wait from full retirement age to age 70 to claim. So I've got my friend Jason MacDowell back, my colleague that works with me in private practice, to talk about more Social Security stuff. So Jason, can you kind of explain how that works, how you end up with a 30% higher benefit?
Absolutely. So it's really called delayed credits. And what we're looking at is a measurement of the full retirement age of the individual. So that's going to be dependent on when the individual is born, all the way to age 70. So how delayed credits work is each month you've waited without claiming from your full retirement age, you'll get a little bit of a delayed credit. So how we like to measure it is within a year. So from the full retirement age to the next year or the next 12 months from that point, you can get up to about 8% more in your monthly benefits just by waiting. So those are called delayed credits. And so when you get to that age 70, if you look on your statement, you'll see that that number is much higher for that monthly PIA if an individual can wait. So that's kind of essentially how the delayed credits work from that point. It's just basically waiting. It kind of goes along with wait as long as you can. Another thing to consider is if there was anything that you wanted to discuss, particularly with your situation with Social Security, I recommend just calling the national hotline. It's the Social Security National Hotline. It's the one number you call where you can actually do the online claiming or over the phone claiming versus going into your local spot. And if you want to ask for a supervisor, then a supervisor actually will have the ability to talk about your personal situation with Social Security, and you might have some claiming options with your particular situation. So supervisors have the ability to do that. The other people, when you call and talk to them, might be limited with that. So ask for a supervisor.
Good advice. And that the way that you get that 30% higher benefit, I'll just add, is because it's compounded, right? So you get the 8% delayed credit, and then you get an 8% on top of the original plus the 8%. So that's a little bit how compounding works. And so, Jason, talk through, what happens if you're kind of in that first scenario that I described, that, you fall into the temptation of, hey, I'm going to start this benefit as soon as I can. I don't want to wait to get the higher amount. But then, maybe you start doing the math and you start thinking about it, and you change your mind. Talk about that.
Yeah, so there's an option. So if you claimed at 62 early and then you realize that, hey, I really needed more to my monthly benefit. Well, you have a period of time where you have to wait till your full retirement age. So at the time that the individual becomes a full retirement age and they've already claimed early, but they have what we call buyer's remorse, you have the ability from full retirement age to turn off or suspend benefits. From that point, then you can start accruing some delayed credits yearly to try to make up the amount that you basically lost by claiming early. It won't be the same as waiting, but you can at least add to it. So you can turn it off, and you can turn it back on at any point from your full retirement age to age 70, obviously being the max.
That's good. So, so there might be some people listening right now that started when they were 62, maybe they're a year or so into it, and now they didn't realize how much more they could increase their benefit by waiting, and now they have a way that they can maybe readdress that and go back. So, I'll just say this too. Social Security claiming can sort of be complicated in a way. For those of us for those who are fortunate enough to have done, marriage God's way, to have one spouse for life, Social Security claiming is kind of straightforward. But for those who have unfortunately maybe experienced the pain of divorce, or those who have lost a spouse, already lost a spouse, the situation becomes a little bit more complex. So, Jason, can you walk us through some of those scenarios?
Absolutely. So these are going to be basically when an individual has options or non-traditional claiming options. Do recommend talking with a supervisor with Social Security Administration if you don't have someone, an advisor, anyone you're working with that has some knowledge on the subject. But those are going to be called ex-spousal benefits or ex-spousal survivor benefits in those cases. Those two situations are going to be, hey, maybe a surviving spouse is of claiming age for Social Security, at least 62, and they had a spouse that died in the past but never got to the claiming age for Social Security. So there might be an option there where survivor benefits are going to be better for them because of the previous. Now, this is also in the case that they didn't remarry. So there's a whole nother situation where if you remarried after 60, there might be more claiming options in there. So the key word is claiming options, and you want to be aware of all of those. So having that knowledge of which one to go with that fits your particular situation is going to be important. I don't want to go too far in the weeds. Another one is where your ex-spouse is still alive and maybe you didn't remarry. It was just from a divorce. There's a situation where there might be some options there. If you were married for at least 10 years, then there will be an ex-spousal benefit that you as an individual can claim while possibly waiting to allow your individual credits accrue and have a higher benefit. So it'd be like going from a lower to a higher. These are all just claiming options. And of course, you want to dig into that a little bit more with the SSA and what will work for you.
Yeah. So like you mentioned, one of the best things that you could do maybe to call and ask for a supervisor, and they'll be able to tell you which all options that you have. So one last thing, talk about having other income. Like, what if you have a government pension? Speak to how that can impact the Social Security benefit.
It's a possible reduction to it, and it's not a harmful one in the sense that how the Social Security looks at it is a non-covered pension and a covered pension. So a simple definition of when you have a pension, can you claim Social Security? Well, the Social Security Administration or the laws have created a reduction to it when you do have a pension. If it's not covered, it means that you didn't pay into Social Security and that pension is supposed to be there. It means that those years before you started working with the employer, whether it's the state or the government or a private employer that's paying a pension, there will be what's called a windfall elimination provision. It's just a small reduction. It's a reduction, to your monthly benefits of Social Security because you have a pension. Then there's also the covered pensions where you did pay into Social Security while also working with an employer that has a pension. Well, those covered pensions won't reduce the Social Security benefit at all. So speaking to the ones that could possibly reduce your Social Security benefits because you have a pension, there might be a claiming time that might be best for you to wait so that you can actually have a benefit to go along with your pension. And that all really depends, of course, on your past 35 years of paying into Social Security, so the past earnings history that way. So those are some options of why to, get a hold of the supervisor if you can, or your financial professional that might have some knowledge on this.
Good stuff. Well, so glad that we could have you on today to go through some of those things. I hope we helped to encourage some people. Hopefully we didn't just confuse people more, but hey, we're giving you a solution if you fall into one of those complicated categories as, just call the Social Security office and get your options. And then, if you work with a financial professional, then you're in a really good place to start talking through some of those things. So Social Security can be, for those who are near getting it and will get it, is usually a crucial piece of the income puzzle for retirees. So take that seriously, work through some of those scenarios, and make sure that you get the most bang for your buck. Well, folks, we are going to take a break here at Financial Issues. We've got, maybe the ag report is coming in the next segment here, but stick with us. We're going to be back with more financial issues on this Labor Day. If you want to learn more about our ministry and how you can be a biblically responsible investor and a good steward with what you have, check us out at financialissues.org. Are you a Christian seeking to align your investments with your faith? I'm Shana Burt, host of the program Financial Issues. During our program, we share valuable information about the financial issues of the day, including how markets and the economy are moving and how public companies are behaving, helping you to make wise decisions with your investments and the money that the Lord has blessed you with. Using biblical standards, we provide you with valuable financial insight based upon Scripture, making it easy for you to invest in a way that aligns with your values. I can assume that most of you have investments in a 401k or IRA, but what I am sure of is most of you have no clue that the companies in your mutual funds may be funding the LGBTQ agenda, pornography, abortion, the list goes on and on. By listening to Financial Issues, you will learn how to get rid of those investments that are dishonoring God.
Become a partner today by simply going to financialissues.org/join. Click the green button to become a partner today.
There are moments in life that define us. Choices determine the courses we take. Choices that create life, or those that save a life. And some make life worthwhile. There are decisions to stay or to go, to remain the same or to grow. Sometimes we pray and make peace. Other times we take a stand for what we believe. In celebration, mourning, triumph, and defeat, we are invested in every decision we seek. Despite differences, we have one thing in common, the desire to do all for the glory of God. Keep your wallet aligned with your heart and your investments in harmony with your faith. Timothy Plan, biblically responsible mutual funds, ETFs, and retirement plans. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses contained at plan.com before investing.
The opinions and recommendations expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of the station or any of the program sponsors. Additionally, all products or services offered by the program sponsors may not be known by the program.
Well, thanks for sticking with us here, folks, and a happy Labor Day to you all today. I do hope that you're enjoying today's program with your family and friends, kind of a swan song of summer, as it were, before we head back into the fall months. I personally am very excited. I love the fall. Christmas is coming. My birthday's in the fall, so it's a good time. But I know for many of us, it's rather bittersweet as the summer comes to a close. But exciting stuff here, and I'm grateful for you all joining us. Of course, this coming month, we have our end of our fiscal year, so you can be praying for us that we would finish the year well here at the ministry. It's been a good year for us for sure. Wanted to remind you also the markets are closed today as it is a holiday. So we won't be giving you the market updates as usual, but we'll be back tomorrow live with those. Same with the ag report as well. Craig also gets a day off I know it's a surprise because of how much of a workhorse he is, but no ag report today. So we'll have the ag report for you again tomorrow, folks. But it's great to be here with you all, and I hope you are enjoying the show. So kind of to continue the celebration of this holiday, we looked at the history of the day back in the first segment. I'd like to share a clip from our own ministry's history of Dan and Shana from several years ago, talking about the importance of Labor Day and what it means for us as Americans. So here is Dan, Celia, and Shana Burt on the importance of this holiday that we celebrate.
It is a time that Americans celebrate the labor movement that was so important in the late 1800s. And labor, this whole movement was put before the country by two men from different parts of the country. They had the same last name, McGuire, but I don't know if they were relatives or not, if they were brothers. But anyway, it was made a national holiday in the late 1800s. And it was so appropriate at that time because of the industrial age. And that age of the greatest generation, it's called, those World War II veterans, and that age of the very late 40s, 50s, and 60s made this country what it is today from an economic perspective. And, that was an era where people worked in factories on a line and made enough money to put their kids through college. Can you imagine? Wow. And it is more of a testimony to how inexpensive colleges were. But they worked on factory lines. They put their children in college. Those children became the innovators and brought the ingenuity to America, and it changed the country forever. Just an incredible time in America, and that's what we are commemorating, that achievement from the labor movement in America. So pretty neat.
Yeah. My prayer for this Labor Day is that everyone who's seeking work or is off on furlough will be able to return to work so that they can provide for their families like they were able to do so long ago. Yeah. And, this will bring us back to a time when there's less dependence on government and quite possibly more fuel for a strengthening economy.
I think it will. And there is nothing better for a people and nothing better for an economy to get into the fire and be refined a little bit. As believers, we think of that from a biblical perspective. If you're listening and you're not a believer, the Bible is very clear that as gold is refined and the dross from gold rises to the top and is able to be skimmed off, this is one of those times that America is getting some of that impurities skimmed off a little bit, and we become a little bit more pure, a little bit more, I don't mean pure in a moral sense of the word, unfortunately, but we become a little bit more sensitive to how important certain things are in our life. And it's always good to get through that fire, and that's what's happening this Labor Day for sure. I'm sorry, Shana, I thought you were getting ready.
I was just agreeing with you. Yes and amen. And the other interesting thing about labor is, one of the first things that God did when he put Adam in the garden was to give him a job, right?
Yeah, isn't that the truth? Yep. And we have been toiling in the job since, and we'll continue to do that. And we do it with, well, hopefully most of us do it with great joy, that is for sure.
Hope you all enjoyed that little FISM classic clip there. Hard work is good. Laboring is good. It is a pre-fall phenomenon, as you just heard Dan and Shana mention there. One of the first things that God did for Adam and Eve, Adam in particular, was give him a job in the garden. This all happened before the fall. And so work is a very good thing, and we should take great pride in the work that we do. Let's get to some listener and partner interaction as we finish out our time here today. Grant, what do we have there from our listeners? I know we have one from Ike to start here.
Yeah, so Ike says, this is not a question. I don't have a request, or I don't want a request response. Your time is very valuable. Thank you for your teaching. You, Seth, and before y'all, yes, I'm Southern. Dan has taught me so many financial, biblical, cultural, and political truths. Thank you for answering my question on the partner conference call last week. The reply expressed kindness and inspired me to discover where the company falls short of FISM standards. And it's not FISM standards, but it's rather, the standards that we try to live by, God's principles.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. And Ike, thanks for that encouragement, man. That is great stuff. Ike referenced the conference call that we had last week. Shana did a great job on that conference call. That is up right now, folks, so you need to take a listen to it. But Ike, I really do appreciate your encouragement, man. It's an honor to be kind of jumping in upstream to what Dan started. And, he brought Shana on. I think it was around maybe, I want to say Shana started co-hosting the show with Dan probably 2019 or 2020. And then I didn't join the staff until 2021. So I'm jumping in a little bit further upstream. But man, it's a joy to be a part of it, Nike. I appreciate your kind words so much. And I'm grateful that we've been able to teach you a little something here and that you're able to get a question to your answer there. And I got to tell you, I love the Southern accents. I don't know if you guys noticed this on the show. We're from Philadelphia. The Philly accent is bad. It's not a good accent. Southern accents are just beautiful. Shana's got it. Most of our callers have it. A lot of our listener base in the South. I'm jealous of you guys. That's great. I think in heaven, everybody will potentially speak with Southern accents. It'd be pretty cool. So, that's good stuff. Ike, thanks for that, brother. I appreciate that. Grant, what do we have next there? I know we got one from Claude as well.
Yeah, a question from Claude. Yeah. How can people consider Kamala the change candidate? Or rather, a good candidate for that matter.
That's a good question, Claude. I appreciate that. Good point too, Grant. That's very interesting. Claude, here's, I think, what the answer is. And so to reference this, so Kamala Harris is kind of fashioning herself as the candidate for change, as most candidates do, particularly Democrat candidates do. That was, if you remember, Barack Obama's big tagline was, "We need change." I think that was his first, might have been his second presidential run, but definitely his first one. And so Kamala's been fashioning herself that way. The problem is she's already been the vice president for 3.5 years. She could have changed all of this in 3.5 years. Obviously, she has limitations being the vice president, but in theory, she's the second highest in charge in the country right now, and yet she's talking about how we need a change. Well, a change would be giving someone else a turn. A change would be the other guy. But Claude, it's a great question, and I think the answer to it is that people are deceived. They're so easily deceived, especially this generation of people, I think. When Kamala says she's going to bring change to this country, what we forget, or what the people who are deceived forget, is that she has been vice president for the last 3.5 years. So the change must be from what she's been doing, right? But people are easily deceived and they're going to fall for it, honestly. I've had conversations with family members who, I can recall one conversation I had with someone who pretty much just said, I think that Kamala Harris is a better fit for the country just because I don't like Trump. And a lot of people believe that. A lot of people just despise him. They won't vote for him because they hate him. I personally think the real reason why so many people, and a lot of us I've seen in the chat before, many of you have mentioned you have family members who kind of feel this way too. I think the reason that a lot of people don't like Donald Trump is because he became a conservative politician. Now, recently, we saw some interesting news, especially concerning abortion, that Trump is perhaps not as personally conservative as he might lead on to be, but nonetheless, he is much more conservative than the mainstream is. But notice that was when people started to dislike him. When he was on The Apprentice, I think people loved him. They thought he was funny and charming. Once he became a conservative politician and became a real threat to the deep state, I think that's when people started to really turn their ire against him. Regardless of all of that, Claude, I think too many people vote with their emotions. And they don't vote based on either their moral code or using common sense. Common sense tells us that Kamala Harris has been in charge during the last 3.5 years, and it's been really bad. So if she's now all of a sudden going to bring change, well, why didn't she do it already? She already had the power to do it. Simple dose of common sense, I think, this November. could be what saves our country. And we could certainly use that as a country. All nations throughout all of time have needed more common sense. The beauty of it is that common sense really, folks, is just wisdom. And God promises us that he will give us wisdom when we ask him for it. So we need to do that not only for ourselves, but for our country as well. A healthy dose of wisdom, which would be an act of grace from our Lord, for as a country we do not deserve it. Lots to talk about as always. We ran out of time today, but folks, I hope you have a blessed rest of your Labor Day today at your cookouts with your family. Remember to work hard and to do all things for the glory of God. And remember that everything that you have as well belongs to the Lord. Let's be found good and faithful servants with the money that God has given to us. And God willing, we'll be back tomorrow for more financial issues. Have a great day. We'll see you then.
If we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under.
Thank you for joining us. This has been an FISM production.